So that I want to kind of walk you through the program, and I also then want to kind of give you at least a couple examples of how it's really benefited people's research. So Delaware INBRE really spends a decent amount of its resources developing research cores. And the point of the research cores is to essentially buy equipment, buy other sorts of expertise and resources that are very difficult for a single investigator to maintain. And these research cores, almost all of them have very high level technical expertise associated with them. And in many cases, these cores are run by PhD level scientists. And the goal here is so that you can expand out the techniques and various other opportunities that you are using in your research. And the overall goal is to then be able to leverage that new data into serious independent funding for our investigators. And some of this is small proof of principle pilot studies. As an example, let's say you want to do magnetic resonance imaging on either an animal or a human. You've never done magnetic resonance imaging before. You can go talk to the scientists that are the experts at that, and you can they will walk you through how to get a pilot study approved. And then there's funding available to do the first proof of principle experiments, which can be kind of a leap of faith to use your existing funding for, but the Core Access Award can pay for that. In some cases, you might be expert at the technique, but it's just expensive to get access to the equipment, and you don't have adequate grant funding to do that. Or you might have a decent amount of grant funding, but you don't have funding to do this pilot investigation, which might be applicable for an additional grant or maybe to help you towards a renewal. And also, in some cases, you get the reviews back, and this is something that happened to me last year. The reviewer said, "Oh, this is a great paper, but you have to do flow cytometry." And it's like, that grant had lapsed. What am I going to do? Of course, Center Access Award is a way you could get access to that technology to finish up that paper. Now, how the program is actually set up is that the Delaware INBRE program has a May 1st to April 30th cycle. And under most circumstances, we open up the funding cycle around May 1st, and we really expect people to be applying over the course of the summer. And the grants are reviewed twice a month at the 1st and the 15th. And in previous years, that a large proportion of the funding that is associated with the program is given out by the end of the summer. And that then you have 6 months to work on it. And that's important because the way this is funded federally, we really have to have all of the money we give out spent by April 30th. There's really no easy way for us to extend that past that date. So the idea is that you apply, you get funded in the summer, you then have the following academic year to use up the money, you're good. However, we also still keep taking applicants as long as there is funding available, and as long as you can finish your project again by April 30th. Now, some other rules is that, of course, you have to be an investigator associated with a Delaware INBRE institution, and you can only receive one of the Core Access Awards or the Multi-Core Access Awards per year. And here's the application. Now, we also have available some other resources. So I don't know if staff in INBRE affiliated cores come on this call, but if you're a staff member at an INBRE associated core, you can also apply for travel awards to go to conferences to help you increase your knowledge that you need to do the core services that you provide. We also provide Core Access Awards for State of Delaware Medicare data, and we provide Core Access Awards for healthcare claims data for the Delaware Health Claims database. So these are all, and the timelines are all based on this reality that the money must be spent by April. And that's simply that where our hands are tied. That has to do with federal grant rules. Now, this year, whether this program got off of people's radar screens or it's just, the stresses of dealing with things during the pandemic, we almost always, our funding for the INBRE Core programs is expended by September. However, this year, we did not get applications for this programs. Also, it's likely we will have more funding than usual to be able to fund these awards because we had money we couldn't spend during all the pandemic shutdowns that we're trying to push out to the community because we can't actually carry money over year to year just because of the way the federal programs are working. So, this is a situation where I definitely encourage you to apply. We are right now working with two what we're calling full consideration deadlines, where the intention is not to spend out all the money until we get applications for October 1st and October 15th. That said, if you don't have something to mind for those deadlines, definitely still, but let's say you get a great, brilliant idea on November 15th, please reach out to the Core Center leaders because it is definitely possible that we will have money that we're going to be able to expend later in the year. I can't guarantee it, but it's definitely possible. The only caveat is if you get a later award, you have to be ready to jump on that money and get it spent by April because, again, we cannot carry these awards over past that date. Now, I just want to show you some things about the application. Is that we have a project title, project director. You have to talk to the director of the INBRE affiliated core before you apply to really talk about the needs and the budgets and the detailed budget, project description, what you're going to do with the money, how is that going to actually increase your research productivity or your ability to apply for grants in your time frame. Again, all money has to be expended by April. Now, one thing that I want to emphasize, there is this project theme. Too many investigators feel that if you don't do cancer, cardiovascular, and neuroscience, you're not eligible. That is not the case. If you are working on areas of research that do not fit under these three umbrellas, but it's biomedically related research, and it's going to use a INBRE supported or affiliated core, please apply. We fund many of these in other themes within the NIH mission. We just need to keep track of cancer, cardiovascular, and neuroscience specifically because that is the overarching target of the INBRE program, but we fund Core Access Awards in other areas of biomedical research all the time, okay? Also, if you think you want to, so this is for, this application is for the cores that are sort of the traditional, what people think of as biomedical research cores like imaging and MRI and mass spec and things like that. We do have separate applications for the Medicaid and the healthcare claims data core facility access. If you are interested in these cores, even though the full consideration deadlines have passed, please reach out to the related core directors. I think in both cases, this is Claudine Jerkovitz. Actually, I guess in one case, it's Terry Lynn Palmer. Let's see, looks like McDuffie is the contact information for the Delaware Medicaid data. Please, please, please reach out to them. That it might be a good time. If it might be that you could still apply this year, I don't think so, but I don't know. However, this also might give you the opportunity to apply for the May 2022 deadlines. And by starting to talk ahead of time, you can figure out what's going on. You can get all the approvals. We want you to be applying to these awards. We really want to push the money out to the community using these programs. Now, that's sort of an introduction to the program itself. What I would like to do now, I stopped sharing. I'm not sure why I'm getting a black screen here. All right. I apologize. I don't know what happened with this. I don't want to start sharing the screen. So I apologize. I don't think I can go back to just a regular set of screens looking at what's going on. The other thing that I want to tell you about, though, is at least one situation that benefited my research that is a place where you really can think about how these core access awards can really change the full forward objective of your research. So my research studies the molecular mechanisms of ocular wound healing. And when I entered this arena, there was a large amount of emphasis on understanding the role of transforming growth factor beta in ocular wound healing. And, you know, that's fine. That's also what everybody else in the field is studying. And the field really had started to, you know, just sort of study the same questions. It was really quite stuck. And it occurred to me that one thing that none of us were studying was how does ocular wound healing result in the activation of the cascade? So what we wanted to do was try to understand what was happening earlier in that process. But every idea we had completely failed. Everything we looked at, we couldn't see any hypothesis-driven biological effects from the second that the wound happened to the onset of TGF-beta signaling. It was a black box, and none of our ideas panned out. So I don't know if you noticed, but there's two kinds of core access awards. There is the straight core access award, which is $4,000 to one core. But you can also, if you have a project that would touch two cores, or that you have information in one core gets handed off for a second core, you can apply to $8,000, $4,000 to each core. And what I did was I had zero experience in next generation sequencing techniques. So what I did was that I applied for a multi-core access award that was funding a RNA sequencing project through the Delaware Genomics Sequencing Center at the University of Delaware. And then I also applied for a $4,000 access award for bioinformatics expertise at the Delaware Bioinformatics Core, so that the sequencing data from the sequencing core could be handed off to the bioinformatics core to basically analyze analysis. So to go back to my research story, basically we don't see didn't see TGF-beta signaling until 48 hours after the injury. So we just decided to sequence after 24 hours after the injury. And it turned out that 3,000 genes change expression by 24 hours after the ocular injury. It was just that it was none of the things that we had hypothesized were changing. And it is before there is any morphologically differences due to the injury. So far, that key data has resulted in 3 publications, and since it completely changed how we were looking at the field, it allowed us to change the direction of 2 different main projects, which have now been funded by 2 R01s, looking at different aspects of that early injury response. Now, I realize your mileage may vary. Very often you won't have the data coming out of a Core Access Award completely changing how you're looking at your project. And in my case, I think it's really changed how people are looking at the entire field. However, it's a good example of how you can leverage an experiment that you never were able to do before. And RNA sequencing is fundamentally a hypothesis generation exercise. In our case, it allowed us to completely change the way we looked at it, new hypotheses, and it has resulted in literally millions of dollars of grant funding. So, please, 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 look at what we can do for you. Look at the available expertise, look at the available ways of thinking. Get out of the rut of the techniques that you are familiar with and go ahead and apply. Now, this has been a number of years now. This has completely changed what my expertise is. I now have doctoral students in bioinformatics who are working on RNA sequencing data full-time now. And we're now a bioinformatics lab when I knew nothing about the field when we got started with those INBRE Core Access Awards. So with that, I want to end. I'm